Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and perhaps even good evening. Thank you so much for dropping by and joining me here on the Daz Pro Artist series. Wonderful to see you all. Before I introduce my wonderful guest for today, I need to tell you a little bit of bad news, and I'm kind of keeping my eye on my OBS streaming software here that tells me my upload bandwidth seems to be dropping in and out. So I'm having a few issues here that means my signal can't leave my house fast enough. It kind of gets congested on the way. This wouldn't be a problem because I have a backup internet connection and I could switch to it, but it doesn't work seamlessly. So the implication is that if I press the big stop button now, it means that the feed probably finishes and I won't be able to bring it back up to this URL, which is a problem. So I thought what we're going to do is we're going to go and see if it works and how it works. And if it works, we're all good. And if it doesn't work, the feed's going to disappear. And we're going to try our best to give you a new URL. As soon as we have it, we'll put it in the chat. I, of course, have a local recording here so that, you know, if the inevitable does happen, our feed will be preserved. Wonderful to see you all. My friends, let me introduce my very special guest for today. It is none other than Mr. John Holding, aka Fugazi. Wonderful to see you, John. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Good to have you. Good to have you.
Yes, it's Saturday night. What else could I possibly want to do on a Saturday night
than to chat with me?
An MD tutorial and chat with you.
Well, indeed. Good to see.
And the sad thing is, that's true.
But that's what makes us true 3D nerds, I suppose. John and I got to be brutally honest with this. John and I have had a wonderful chat about Elden Ring earlier because we're both. I apparently got you into Elden Ring, which, you know,
yes.
Should I apologize for that? I'm not.
Sort of. It's it's hard to say.
You're not the first person who says that.
It could be a blessing or it could be something else, but we'll find that out.
Yes, indeed. No, I'm glad that you're here with us. John, I think we don't really know you by your real name, John Holding, so I'm glad.
No, generally not. Some people might.
Some people might.
Depending upon how long they've been doing, 3D stuff and whether they've experienced my tutorials before.
Well, so you're also known around the Metaverse, so to say, as the 3D Megaverse. That is the name of your YouTube channel. Brian, if you could put a link to John's channel into the chat, that'd be great. John's channel is full of helpful tutorials about Substance Painter, Marvelous Designer, some Silo. There's also Blender. It's expanding all the time. Good to see it.
I must warn you, though, I'm not an entertainer.
But that's, sometimes that's not really that important because, it's about the knowledge and, having other people present, having just seeing other people's workflow. I think that really helps. So I'm so glad that you're sharing it. Nearly 2,000 subscribers. So subscribe. Come on.
Yes, just short.
And of course, more importantly, people who know you from the Daz Metaverse, so to say, you've been making props and things like that for various 3D marketplaces for 20 years?
Something along those lines. I've been making 3D things since 1998.
My God, wow.
I think, I was a traditional artist to start off with, well, reasonably traditional, doing airbrush work. And I ended up, I wanted a better 3D model. I wanted something that I could pose and light and so on and so forth. And of course, at the time, it was quite lo-fi at the time. I had a wooden figure, which many people have.
To illustrate, I think I can probably
you've got one
show
somewhere.
You him. My Woody.
So I needed a replacement for it anyway. And, I found Poser. And the Poser's original kind of intent was to provide a 3D reference for traditional artists. I started getting into Poser, and then it was a case of actually, I want some nice lighting, and I want a nice render angle, and I want some props in there, and you know, there, of course, there was a lot in the marketplace, not as much as there is now. But yeah, I wanted to make my own thing. So I put my airbrush down and picked up a mouse and started learning 3D modeling.
So in the late 90s, we're talking, what types of computers are we talking? We're talking 486s type thing?
I suspect I probably had a Pentium at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, it sort of slowly started to come up in specs. I'm never on the very latest. I'm far too tight, cheap, or miserly, depending upon where you come from, to spend the absolute most on the absolute best. So I've got quite a modest system. I think it's an i7, a 30 GTX 3700.
Okay,
not a TI. But it works well enough.
Works well enough, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to render out great scenes or
I suppose
animations, but
for the stuff that we do, really, it doesn't have to be a high-end system. It's always, those things are kind of nice to have, but I think it's important to remember it's not necessary.
No.
It's really good to see vendors like yourself who have a huge portfolio. I'll say, get by on lower spec hardware. It's a bit like Corm. Corm says, well, I've bought my system like 5-6 years ago and it still serves me really well. Back then it was expensive. Now it's kind of, okay. It's like my system. It's a workstation from like 5 years ago, I think, that would have cost 10 grand then. I picked it up on eBay for $400, and it's kind of, it's what you want, and it works really, really well. I love it. Tug says it well. Johnny got bitten by the 3D bug. Yes, exactly. That's how we do.
Someone call me Johnny. That's a no-no.
Tug, sorry. Indeed.
Sorry.
Can't happen.
Now. So, only one person gets to call me Johnny, and that's my dad.
Okay. We don't call you Johnny. We're going to call you John or Fugazi, if that's okay.
That's perfectly fine.
So tell me, when you search for things like, aside from Poser, what other programs did you add to your arsenal over the years, and more importantly, more
because
recently?
I was sadly ignorant at the time of 3D and what I needed. Yeah, I didn't realise there were many different kinds of 3D modelling apps, of course. So I think the very first one that I got and then failed miserably to get anywhere with was called Amorphium.
Oh, don't think that rings a bell for me.
Well, it was an odd creature, almost voxels before its time. So you could, cram shapes together and, make things out of, either adding them or subtracting them and doing all that sort of thing.
Oh, interesting.
But it would have been great for organic and that sort of things, but I wanted to make tables and chairs and doors and walls and things, and it wasn't really very suitable for that. After that, I think it was Silo.
Silo, yes.
Yeah.
That rings a bell. They're still around, right? Silo are still going?
They went away for a while, but they've last year, I think it might have been earlier this year, they re-released a new version.
Oh, okay.
Along with a rendering option called Milo.
Oh, nice.
So it's an iRay-based thing. So you can take your models from Silo and transfer them over to Milo and have a look at it in a rendered form.
Oh, sweet.
So yes, so then Silo, I think I'd probably toyed with Hexagon and Carrera. Hexagon I liked very much, but it was a little bit on the, unstable side.
Correct. Yeah, that's a very good word for it, because it's not for lack of features. It is just that it's not exactly stable, especially when you do complex things with dynamic geometry and that. That's its downfall. Yeah. Still great for quick fixes with the Daz integration though. But to build something from scratch, and especially as models get large and complicated, I totally agree with you.
Yes, I enjoyed Hexagon. I tried ZBrush,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't speak the same language as I did.
It doesn't speak the same language as anyone.
Well, I think it does. Some people, I think it suits very well. And over the years, I've come to understand that there is no best package for it's whichever makes sense to you. And I'll give you a bit of an analogy or a personal story on it. For many, many years, my texturing was a joke. And I mean that wholeheartedly. You know, uh, people that saw them didn't like them, friends, colleagues, and I agreed with them. I was trying really hard with, some 3D packages. Was it Blacksmith?
Oh yes, Blacksmith. Yes, I still have a copy.
Yeah, and I thought, 3D Coat. 3D Coat, a terrific package. Love it for its features. Has some really good features. One of which is the ability to, once you've unwrapped and painted a model, you can re-unwrap it.
Oh yeah,
and it recalculates your texture for you, which is terrific.
Nice.
But for all of its, depth and brilliantness, it didn't make me a texturer because it didn't make sense to me.
It doesn't, like what you're saying, it doesn't speak your language. So it's always, I find that very important when some of the viewers that I speak to, they get excited about trying out new packages, and I'm all for it. You got to try things and see if it feels right for you. Like ZBrush was one of those things that back when I bought it like 10 years ago, I bought it because of features, because no other program could do it. And I was thinking, do you guys have a trial version? And I spoke to a really nice representative there who said, no, sadly, we don't have a trial version, but I can give you the option to get a refund within 30 days. I thought, okay, fine, I'll try it out. $900 on the table. I install it, I open it, and I was thinking, this isn't going to work out. I'm going to need more than 4 weeks to understand the program. And I kept it, so I didn't get a refund. But I struggled with it for years, and it's because I tried to make it work for me, and it didn't. It really didn't. And I felt sorry for it, and I hated it. I knew the features were there, but I just couldn't get them out of it. And in the end, what I learned really was, hey, this is not the right program for you at this time in your journey. I'm glad I have it now. Literally 10 years on, I use it daily, and it's awesome. I really like the brushing integration with the bidirectional Daz integration, fixing things and just smoothing things out. Perfect. I use maybe 5% of what it can do, but that 5% is excellent. But it took me 10 years to get to get to like it and to get to make it work for me. And that rings so true for me. You got to try out these packages and find the one that works for you. It's not the tool that makes the artist, it's you that makes the artist. And if you find the thing that gets the job done, it doesn't matter if it's 10 years old, it doesn't matter if it's the industry outsider, like what we're going to do today. Really exciting. Make jewelry in Marvelous Designer. Well, that's certainly not what Marvelous Designer is designed for, but it doesn't matter, because if you can make it work for you, it's just a beautiful way to create 3D geometry in a way that other programs don't. So yeah, totally agree with that.
But the thing that made me realize the point, the whole texturing journey, was then I tried Substance, Painter, and to some extent Designer, and now it made sense. Because you can build it up, because you can go backwards and change things and forwards and tweak, and you can go back and forward and back and forward. It makes sense to my brain. It just clicked, and now I'm quite happy texturing. I wouldn't say I'm the best in the world. In fact, I would absolutely say I'm not the best in the world. But it just makes sense, and it's just then that if ZBrush doesn't work for you, try somebody else. If Blender doesn't work for you, although I would encourage you to make it work for you because it's free.
Yes.
And then something else, and one of the real joys of Silo, to take it back to that, is that Silo was one of the programs for me, which was so simple, so simplified and focused on what it wanted to do, that it made sense. You know, I'd had some sweet programs like, I mean, Carrera was a bit of a sweet program, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I love Carrera. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it does this, and it does this, and it does that, and it does the other. You know, like Blender. You know, you can model in it. You can do animation. You can do dynamics. You can rig. You can do everything. But Silo is just a modeler. That's all it is. And you're not confused by all of this kind of environment around it.
Yes.
You know, it's just a clear path to modeling. And, you know, for anybody wishing to learn modeling, I would suggest Silo, just for, you know, if for no other reason than for that reason, that it's focused and clear, and, you know, there's no extra bits that you'll never use.
It's true. And we went through this real, I suppose, phase in which every program tried to add features from other programs on top of it, and that made it a very complex program. But also some of the things didn't work very well. Like if you remember the hair tool in Carrara, that's okay, but it certainly isn't the best to create a room. But you know, it's back for when we had it. It was kind of interesting, but you wouldn't really do hair today in Carrara anymore. You probably use other things for that. You might get started, but you know, it's not like we wouldn't do hair like that anymore. But I remember where we had so many programs trying to do so many things. It's kind of nice to come back to this idea to say, hey, this program does that and it doesn't do anything else. That's kind of nice. That means for the user, first of all, development costs are much lower, so it can be a cheaper program, but it's also much easier to pick up program. Like I know that the people who want to learn Blender, and I hear this time and time again, they say, I don't even know where to start. It's such a complex program. And this is really important to remember. You don't have to learn it all. You can just learn the bits of it that you need. And it's okay not to use 90% of what the app has to offer at the moment. You can grow into that. It's there for you when you need it. But if you want to do modeling and you want to do modeling in Blender, don't worry about sculpting. Don't worry about, you know, physics simulations and fluids and all kinds of other things. It's a good point.
No, there's plenty enough to learn within modeling on its own. You know,
how long have you been using Substance Painter, if I may ask?
Years now, I think.
Years?
You'll forgive me because I'm an old man and my memory isn't great. I'm not great on dates, but yeah, a couple of years.
Did you join when it was algorithmic, or did you join when they were already Adobe?
Algorithmic.
So you've been, it's been more than 2 years then.
Okay, fair enough. Yes, but yeah, I mean, once I understood it, and that took a little while, as you said, you know, it takes time to learn a program. You can't just pick it up and say, right, you know, wave a magic wand and now you've got the perfectly textured model. But it took a little while for me to get a result out of it. I was happy. But once I started to do that, once I started to look a bit deeper and work out layers and masks and all that good stuff, it really fell into place. And now actually, you know, texturing used to be a real chore for me. But now it's fun. It's a pleasure.
Fun. Do you know, that's another super important thing to remember, like for us hobbyists, half pros, you know, all this lot in the middle. I think it's a really important thing to hang on to. It's about the fun. We do this because we like it. We're passionate about it, and this is why we want to do it. It's not because we get paid for it. And if that ever happens, awesome. But I think for many of us, that's a bonus, isn't it? But most of us, we just follow the passion. And I think, like with texturing, I totally relate. Like flood fills in Photoshop it's a chore. It really is, and it doesn't look great. But with Substance Painter, I'm getting the same out of it, and I've been using it for a year. Adobe just charged me the second year now, just literally this week or last week, and but it took me a year to understand the basics, and this is just how long it takes to understand programs. You can't rush these things. You got to be in the right mindset and.
It's different for different people.
Hmm.
Some people will pick it up quickly, some people take more time.
Indeed.
One of the reasons that I started sort of making tutorials, because regardless of the fact that I have a store with lots of Daz products in it, my starting off was doing tutorials,
Hmm.
and I started to do those in the poser years.
Oh, that long ago? I didn't know.
Yeah,
Wow.
because there was something I didn't understand in poser, which is rigging clothes, and I'd seen tutorial after tutorial showing me how to do it. And I tried it and I tried it and I tried it and I tried it, and something in every one just didn't work.
Hmm.
And then I found a tutorial, which I may have done before, because I've probably did the ball multiple times. But while I was doing that tutorial, something clicked and I understood it. And then I realized that in every tutorial I'd done, they didn't include one or more steps.
The one thing that made it all fall apart. You go, hang on a minute, I don't get what you're doing there. Yeah, I've got to relate.
Yeah, so I mean, if you imagine each step is a cog, in a series of cogs, and if you turn one, they all turn. Every one of those tutorials had a missing cog of some description. It was either they used a throwaway statement like, "Oh, just use the hierarchy editor."
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's the hierarchy editor? Why do I need to use it?
Yes.
And
Show
how
me,
do
what
I
is
use
it?
it?
Why is it? Why is it important?
Or somewhere along those lines. But I finally understood it, and then I finally could sort of picture it in my mind. Because I mean, that's one of my, well, possibly my only marketable skill is the fact that I can see how things fit together once I understand them. And once I understood, I thought, well, I can show people how to do this. I can save people the frustrations that I have, the months, if not years, of trying and trying and trying.
Mm-hmm.
I can prevent that by giving them a plain English, non-technical, this is how you do it tutorial.
Yeah.
And that's how I started. And, and that's all I've tried to do ever since, really, with my tutorials, is try to give people, I've researched it, I've figured it out. This is how you do it in plain English.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't like my videos, and that's fine, because I go on a lot.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest
them.
criticism that I get as well. Your videos are too long.
Yeah.
We want the 30-second distilled version, and it's
Yeah.
just often not possible to distill a 20-minute workflow into 30 seconds. It really isn't easy, and I guess we're both trying our best, but it's also okay if people don't like it. That's cool with me too.
But there are still many people that do like it.
Indeed, and those are the ones we want to focus on. Indeed, yes.
They're the ones we like, yeah. And I've had a few comments on my things. Is please keep doing it.
Yes.
Please, one of the comments was, keep going. We like you being pedagogic. And I thought, what the hell's that? That doesn't sound very nice. But actually, it's just
that certainly wasn't complicated. That was a compliment. Yes.
Yeah. So once I figured it out, I was happy, if not actually a bit touched, which was
that's nice. John, tell me, one of the things that I'm very intrigued by looking at your huge catalog of products just on the Daz store, as well as on Renderosity, and I haven't actually checked other places, but there are a ton of products that you were kind of a co-author of, and most of them were in conjunction with the mysterious Ironman or Ironman 13, and I have many of your sets. I believe I speak for many of us that we have so many of your sets, and I think one of the things that I find really striking about that work is that it's not just one thing. It gives you a set of stuff to really play with and to really go to town with, either easy, or you can get more complex with it. I love the idea that you guys have a set with a theme. You have the full set that you can shoot in from multiple angles. You've got the poses and you've got the outfit. So you really have that whole themed package thing set up. And that's wonderful to see. I'm curious how working in a team works. How does that, who's doing what? Who comes up with the ideas? Who does what in the team?
Well, team-wise, Ironman comes up with the ideas. He is the business brain.
Okay.
He's far more business-like and understands markets far better than I do. Were I to do it, I would make fanciful things that nobody would enjoy. Or
Except
maybe a few
yourself.
people would enjoy, but not enough to make it a financially viable kind of, prospect, which is terribly boring. But, to be successful, you need to make things that people want to use, preferably a lot of people. So Ironman comes up with the ideas. And then we divide up the work between ourselves. Now, back in the early days, Ironman 13 was a couple, but they're no longer together. And the female half of Ironman 13 doesn't do it anymore. So it's Mike who is still doing it. So he will do a lot of the collation. He will find, say, references and sort of distribute them out. He's the one that is much better at using Daz among us.
Okay.
So, basically, I will model the things.
Okay.
And I may texture some of the things also.
Okay.
But Mike's a better texturer than I am, so he'll do the other things. Then Mike will set it up in Daz, get the lighting right, get the material settings right, and so on and so forth.
Does he do the promo renders as well for the packages?
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful. Cool.
Because he's much better at that stuff than I do.
But again, it goes back to, whatever comes more natural to you, you focus on that. And it looks like you guys have a relationship in which that works. So
we complement each other because he's much better at business and I'm much better at technical. I work out how to do things. I work out ways of doing things that, if you don't have, Mike spends much more time producing than I do. So, his days are filled with making things work and producing products and so on and so forth. My time, especially with the website now, not the website, the YouTube channel, is to learn things and to teach people things. And to develop new processes to make things better. So, over the course of the years, we have developed sort of processes and procedures and macros and scripts that take a lot of the drudge out of setting up a product.
The tedium, so to say.
And there is a lot of it.
Well, just as an example, like one of the fairly recent ones was the ice cream parlor, wasn't it? That's fairly recent. And
that's
I'm thinking,
a nice fun one.
It is, wasn't it? I'm thinking this is kind of cool to see the theme, the overall theme. Then you have the outfit, then you have the poses, and you have all the little props. So it's not like I've seen sets, not by you, mind you, that were literally one large OBJ object, and you go, how am I going to move the chair? That's attached to the floor. That can't happen. So in your case, if you have something that is a level that's made out of, I say, 100 things, 100 small props. They're all they all need to be individually textured, put into position. They usually exist as a 0 position thing that you can drag in, as well as one that is in its position as part of the scene.
Yes.
So this is all the stuff that takes a ton of time to get right and to set up in a way that
it really does.
It makes it enjoyable then for us users to go, hey, that counter needs to go elsewhere, that wall needs to move away, that table and the chair group that needs to move over here to fit the shot. But that's what sets a mediocre product apart from a really good product. And with you guys, I've seen this consistent quality, and so it's a pleasure to work with it. And then it's not just that; it's also then the outfit and the poses. So fantastic work! Wonderful that you can share it with us. That's really nice.
But one of the many things that we decided early on is that we wanted to make things as usable and customizable for customers as we possibly could. Because we both bought things that disappointed us.
Right.
That well, look at this, it's brilliant, it will change your life, and you get it and it's no, this doesn't change my life at all.
Doesn't change my life at all, no.
Buying this has made my life slightly worse because now I'm disappointed. We want to provide value, and we want to provide good quality. And back in the early days, we didn't necessarily provide those things, and that's not because we weren't trying; it's because we weren't very good. But we've got better over the years, and more strict with ourselves, and to the point where actually we have to rein ourselves in a bit, because when you've got 50 props to set up with 50 different textures, not just 50 different color maps, we've got 50 different normal maps, 50 different metal and
whatnot maps, roughness maps, indeed, yes.
Yeah, there's there's a lot to do. Sometimes we have to compromise a bit because the more there is and the longer it takes and the more kind of fixes we have to make, if that's required, the longer the product takes to make. The longer the product takes to make, the longer it's going to be before it's released, and then before we get any kind of kickback from
cash. Indeed. I was, just as an example, I was playing Stray this morning. Beautiful game that came out last week, I believe, where you play a little cat in a very detailed kind of cyberpunk. You've watched it. It's just such a wonderful environment, and we kept talking about it in the stream. The amount of work that it takes to produce something like that, as we all know, if we're talking about one room, and that takes us like a month or two to make from scratch. That's one room, for Daz Studio. It'll take just so much. That's why video games take years to make, especially if you're a small team. So I appreciate the insight, John. It's really nice to hear that. So I know we've taken a bit longer for the introduction, but it's just wonderful to hear some of the experiences that you bring and some of your 3D journey. So I greatly appreciate that. If you do have any questions for John, do drop them in the chat. My moderators will fish them out, which is going to be Brian and Julia and Nate today, by the way. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for everyone to be here. Sorry about the bandwidth. I know it keeps dropping out so that the picture goes a little bit fuzzy, but it's one of those things. I think hopefully we'll get the gist across, and the recording usually looks a tad better than the live stream. So John, we've been talking about Marvelous Designer a little bit, and you wanted to show us today how we're going to make jewelry in Marvelous Designer, among other things. So it's, tell me a little bit about your Marvelous Designer journey. When did you discover it, and what are you making with it? Are you part of the clothing design team in the Ironman Fugazi duo?
Yes. So we're always looking for things to make life easier. And when Marvelous Designer first kind of reared its head, we thought, oh, wonderful! Now we're going to make clothes really easy,
super easy. Yes.
As you do, you pick up ZBrush, you think, oh, now I'm going to be able to do this really
super easy.
And you open it and you think, what?
Oops.
So it's been some years. Trying to remember the first version. It wasn't one. and
No,
might
I'm
have been two, but
yeah, so it's been around for a while. Like I think I remember Julia discovered it. We're a little bit like the husband and wife kind of duo as well, except
yeah.
for we're not that productive in regards to making products. We're more like, we're playing with these things. And Julia discovered Marvelous Designer 3 back in the day, and that must have been 2014, something along those lines, 2013. 13, 14, around the same time I bought Zebra, she discovered Marvelous Designer 3. And I remember buying 4 because I saw that and I was thinking, oh man, this is just so cool. The way, what the stuff you can do with cloth in almost real time. I was thinking, this is too cool. I'm not sure if I'm ever going to use it for anything sensible, but I just loved
but I'm going to get it anyway.
Yes, I'm going to get it. And I stuck with it ever since. I think I kind of upgraded to every other version, and it's indeed marvelous program to use.
And it's become more and more marvelous with each iteration.
Indeed.
Because we decided, when we first got it, that we couldn't use it.
Interesting.
Because while, it produced marvelous results in Marvelous Designer, when you took it out, there were issues.
Yes, I remember those discussions. We had those as well. All inside Marvelous Designer, everything's like this magic black box. And the moment you hit export OBJ, you think, that's not fit for the Daz store just yet, is it?
Yeah. So we left it for a while, and then we came back to it. And I think we came back to it, I can't remember which version it was, but it went from a tri-mesh to a quad mesh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember them introducing that 6, maybe 5, 6. I don't remember.
Somewhere around there.
It's been a while.
Yeah. And then they've introduced retopology since then, which I've never used, frankly, because I don't see the point. But yeah, and it's got better and better and better. It's added more and more features to make it easier for us creators. And yeah, I think it's at a level now, and has been for a few iterations, where you can make some really amazing things out of it. It's the one time I wish I had a better processor.
Right. Yes, because the accurate simulation is all CPU based, isn't it? The GPU based version, it kind of works and it does it much faster, but it's less accurate. So yeah, I like when it's a fairly complex garment, I think I don't have a choice but to use GPU, but the accuracy just isn't there. So yeah. And I think I have a fast processor, but it's never fast enough, is it? So
no, never. But the issue with the GPU is not only is it not as accurate, it cannot do cloth self-collision.
Oh, is that the problem?
Yeah. So it's, with a long flowing skirt that's a bit wavy and so on and so forth, will intersect with itself, without even thinking about it.
And only
which is so good to anyone.
Only really. The CPU sim can actually calculate that. The GPU sim can't do that.
No.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I mean, maybe it will in the future, maybe it won't. But I don't use it. So yes, what do I do with it? Well, I create the cloth meshes.
So, like, if we say ice cream parlor set again, you would make the uniform.
Yeah. Yes, I made the uniform.
Nice one. Look at that.
I think I've made almost everything in the last, little while in terms of the mesh itself. Don't set it up because, quite frankly, I'm rubbish at it.
No, but that's partly, this is especially with clothing designers, you see amazing designs being made with Marvelous Designer, and it's a whole different issue to go from that to usable Daz product. It's always something, if you do it for yourself, no problem. It's just something different. If you use it for your own render, where it doesn't have to contain morphs and rigging and whatnot, it just needs to work for that one render that you're making or for that one animation that you're making. But I often see this, that there's very talented clothing designers out there who use either Marvelous Designer or Close 3D, and they have the most amazing stuff. Like Daniel springs to mind. If you know Daniel's YouTube channel,
I do.
He streams amazing stuff, and it's great. He gives his designs away for free on his Ko-fi page. It's wonderful to see that. There's a great number of designers who make their Marvelous Designer projects available on ArtStation for literally $5, so literally hardly anything. But it's just the Marvelous Designer project. So it is not a usable Daz project or product as such. And that is, so I totally appreciate that there's a whole different workflow making that work. So good to hear as well that you actually split that up. It's not a one-man job. It can be, but it's not necessarily.
You know, if one person could do everything, how can I put it? Life would be quite difficult. Because nobody would need anybody else.
That's true.
In all things in life, it takes a team or a duo or something or other, to get things done. I mean, some people are good at some things and some people are good at other things. And
good point.
When you come together and do it together, then you make more.
It's true. I always enjoy that about our co-streams as a small example. It's it's one thing watching one person do something, but it's quite another to watch two people do something together, learn from one another. That's really what I'm excited about. Let's have a look at your screen, if I may, and show us what we're going to do in Marvelous Designer today. I believe if I do this, do we then see that? Yes, we do. That's cool. We see that.
Okay, you can see me now. So, as you can see, we're in Marvelous Designer, and I've applied a dress to this model for the sake of the children. We don't want to corrupt,
yes.
We don't want to corrupt people.
No.
With digital whatever.
Yeah, because that's like so evil.
Yes, indeed. So what I was thinking about, what I have been thinking about probably for a month or so, is I've been playing with trims. Now, I don't know if you, when I say you, I mean everybody that's watching rather than you personally.
Yes.
I know you know because I've shown you.
I don't know much about it though, so I'd love to get just a little rundown of trims are as opposed to the pattern pieces we see on the right in 2D. Yes. We see them in the 3D view, basically folded and draped on the left-hand side.
Yeah. So you can add what they call hardware trims to your garments. So I was looking into this recently, and let's hide that bit because I don't need it just for now.
I like it.
So within the library of Marvelous Designer, there is a hardware and trims folder. Now, not all of these are hardware and trims. Some of them are just other assets. For example, what have we got? The buttons. These aren't hardware and trims. These are buttons, which are used through the button tool, which is another kind of trim, if you like. But if we have a look down here, we have these ribbons, which have been set up as hardware trims. And I can select any one of these and add it to this garment. Now, saying that, it is a hard trim. It won't behave like a ribbon, but it can still add a nice little touch to our garment. So I'm going to take this one here, and whoops, if I double click on it, it will ask me a question. I never change any of this. I always just click open.
So trims, just for the 3D enthusiasts among us, they are basically they're not simulated garment pieces. Those are kind of hard surface geometry, right? I would imagine.
They are hard surface geometry, gotcha. Yes. Although to say that, I believe the vast majority of the trims that Marvelous Designer ships with, the trims have been made in Marvelous Designer and then exported out and then bought in as a trim.
And then, right, yeah, that makes sense. So these things like ribbons are classic difficult things to make in Marvelous Designer. You can, and I've seen people literally have a long string that gets folded and like you would do it with a proper piece of ribbon, I suppose, and make a proper knot. But it takes them like an hour and a half to do that. So it's actually much easier to just go and do this.
Believe me, I've played with ribbons.
You've tried? Oh my God.
Yeah. For the Marvelous Designer users out there who may not have been in this directory and may not know, the actual files that we use to make these trims are in this ZPack directory. So you can open these as Marvelous Designer files and they are the files that you can play with and drape and use as a normal MD item.
Oh, sweet. So those are actually in the ZPack directory. Those are Marvelous Designer projects of how they made the trim.
Exactly.
Ah, and then these ones here in the like one level above it, they're with the .trim ending or .trm ending. Those
.trm, yeah.
Those are the things that you can bring in and import into your own project.
Indeed. These are the hardware trims.
Cool.
Yeah.
This is already super valuable, John. I really appreciate you talking us through this. Those are kind of things I have no idea about a Marvelous Designer. It's great to have a look at this.
Well, until you go looking, you wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know.
You know, and I'm just a sort of person that will eventually go looking, although it's taken me however many years to get there. So anyway, here we have the trim, and I can move this around, as you can see, and I can rotate it, and I can do all sorts of things, but it doesn't behave like a trim until you press this little button here, which took me an age to find. I looked everywhere for gluing or pinning trims to garments, and it just, I found it somewhere on the internet at one point in time, and then I was done. So this little thing here is a glue icon. And as you can see, as I sort of go over the mesh here, you see it's sort of aligning with wherever I'm pointing.
It almost behaves like the brush preview in Substance Painter or in ZBrush, where it kind of it seems to align itself to the normal of whatever it's up against.
Of wherever I'm pointing. So I'm trying to find a spot where it's more or less right, although you don't have to. And when I click there, it will jump to that point. And now I have a nice little ribbon trim.
Sweet.
Sat on my shoulder. If it's poking in a little bit like this, or it needs adjusting, you can use the gizmo to do so. So if I just come around here, perhaps I'll rotate this a little that way. And then I've poked in there, so I'll just pull it out a little bit. And if you use this gizmo next to the glue gizmo, you can scale it.
I see. I didn't actually know that Marvelous Designer had a scale tool. I had just always assumed, well, I guess they don't have it. That's what that's for.
Yes. It just switches the gizmo over to the, the scale gizmo rather than the move rotate gizmo.
Fascinating. I had no idea. Brian, did you know this? This is cool. I mean, not so much about the scale tool, but about trims that you can glue them onto avatars or onto fabric. I had no idea. Brian and I were both seriously excited about Marvelous Design, and it's one of those tools I neither him or me play enough with, so it's one of those things.
Well, fortunately for me, I get to play a lot because Mike is always pushing me to make better things, and to make better things, you need to know more. So, it's all good.
I'm so glad he's doing that, because I think, one day we'll have a look at a set. Maybe this is a great idea for a stream. We take something like the ice cream parlor set, and you take us through it. What was involved in making each single piece? That'd be really just great to hear. How did this all come together? How long did it take from start to finish? Those types of stories, they're just invaluable. So.
Yes, lots of pain and crying and tears and. No, it's not that bad. I don't want to put anyone off.
No.
So anyway, that's the story of trims essentially, and how I eventually found how to use them. But my brain is always sort of percolating away in the background, and I think it was last week or the week before I thought, well, can I do jewellery like this? And I was pretty sure I could. And that's how sort of this bit came out of it, really. So shall I go on to doing that bit?
Please do, yes.
Yeah.
So jewelry is one of those things. I love jewelry in Daz Studio, and it's a wonderful thing to accessorize a character. There's always something missing, and I think Corma and I, we said this before, that we can't ever have enough necklaces, earrings, and all that sort of stuff. But what I find I probably adjust most with using ZBrush or blender is the fit of a necklace. And it's often because a necklace either just hangs and kind of floats, and you have to be really careful to make sure it doesn't intersect with the figure or it doesn't hover, or it has this tendency to look like it's glued to the figure, so it kind of sits too close on all the bones and on all the structure. So Marvelous Designer, I'm excited at how you're gonna do that, because I have a feeling the fit is just gonna be much improved with something that Marvelous Designer may be able to bring to the table.
Well, this is part of why I wanted to do it in Marvelous Designer.
Oh, okay.
Because making a chain that fits to Genesis and hangs properly is a long and how can I put it? It's time consuming, and I never get it right. I never get the hang right, because there's always something that's not quite there. Either it's so skin tight it's not right, or the hang and the pendant on the front isn't right. It's a lot of work. So I mean, this is essentially for me to be able to do it quickly and easily, so I can make things quicker, which is why I learn everything, really. So what I'm going to do is I'll just get my other UV thing up. I'm going to just select these and let's freeze them. Yes,
good idea.
Let's freeze them.
So you don't get...
It's there. There we go. And that will, give me a little bit more overhead processing power to work with. So let's zoom in a little bit to the 2D pattern.
The interface has changed since version 10. I've only just upgraded to 11, and those of us who've been stuck with older perpetual versions like Anita, I totally feel you, man. It's difficult. So I upgraded to 11 because the interface has changed so much, and I was stuck on 10 up until then. So I feel your pain.
Yeah, bless you. Unfortunately, they've just added so many more tools. If they'd left it as it was, we'd have a tool sort of palette down to about here, and not much space to work in. So they've grouped a lot of things together, which I still find annoying, but we'll get there. Okay, so the first thing I want is my chain, and for that I'll use the rectangle tool, and I'm just going to estimate out, and I think somewhere around there. This has got my wrong material on it, so I'm just going to add a new material and drag and drop that on there. There we go. So now this is something that will strike fear into the hearts of seasoned MD users. I'm now going to set the particle distance to 3. Did someone squeak?
That was me, yes.
Was it? It's in pain. Now,
it is just because it makes so much geometry. That's why we don't like to go beyond below 10, like 5 for small pieces. But
but this is such a curved area and such an undulating over the collarbone and so on and so forth. If you don't have enough geometry, it won't work, because it will zigzag all over the place and it won't look quite right. But for a small piece of pattern like this, 3 is not going to make that much difference. If you were doing the whole garment at 3, forget about it, go home. Not go home, go out, have a drink, have a meal with friends, come back, and it might be finished.
I think it reminds me, I used one of Daniel's corsets that he's made. It looks beautiful, really nice. And I took that and exported it as it was as an OBJ, and it had a million polygons. But particle distance on most of these things was set to 5, and it was just so much detail and so much ribbons, but Daz Studio just couldn't even handle it, so it took like 5 minutes to import one more, and I was thinking, we need a different way to do this. So
yes. So now I can turn my arrangement points on with Shift and F. And then I'll select the arrangement point on the front of the neck there, and then Shift F to turn those off. Now you'll see that's dug into, which is a little bit annoying, but if you have the pattern selected, in its properties under arrangement point, there is an offset. And if you increase that offset, it will grow.
Oh, offset.
So it comes out of the model and we're away. Now, I can now see that it's not long enough. So if I use the transform pattern, double click on the middle point, that will scale it both sides equally. And I can pull that out to get a better idea of whether it's going to fit or not. And because I'm on 3, of course, it's going to take a little bit of time.
Take a little bit of time.
But not, excessive.
Then there's Zoom in the background and stuff. Yeah, we do tax our computers with stuff, so
oh yeah,
we give them a break.
We give them a good go. Okay, so with this, then I'm just going to sew up the end with a segment sew, and sew that end to that end, and I'll press space to set the sim going. Wait. Adjust my glasses, look over this way. If you wonder why I keep looking over in that direction, I've got the YouTube stream over that side. When Jay's talking, it's my natural instinct to turn and look at his face.
Of course. Thank you for the explanation. We appreciate that.
Yeah, it's not that I'm mad. Well, it's not the only reason. So I can now sort of pull this about. And it's going to spring around a lot because I wasn't very gentle there. If I can suggest anything within here, always be gentle when you're pulling things around, because as the cloth moves, it builds up inertia. And if you pull too hard, it's a bit like a rubber band and it will fly all over the place. Okay, so that's not too bad.
Kind of patience and gentleness is the key, isn't it, too?
Patience and gentleness. Yes, I've had to learn it over the years, just about. Okay, so this is obviously too thick to be a chain, but I do need to have this thickness for this to work, and I'll show you why in a little while. So if I go to the edit pattern, I'm going to select the bottom line and right click and offset as an internal line for 2 millimeters, and then click OK.
So it makes us a tiny little strip at the
little strip, and that's going to represent our chain. But first, I need to right-click this line and cut and sew.
Cut and sew, cool.
So that separates it out, and I want to separate it out because I want a new fabric. So if I add a new fabric, I want this fabric under its opacity to be 0, and then I'll apply that to that top strip.
I'm learning so many things. Marvelous Designer has opacity. Well, bloody of course it has, doesn't it? It's just I've never gone looking for that, actually. How fascinating.
So this is also a little bit too clothy. So I like to use one of the fabric presets for this. So in the fabric presets, if you slide all the way to the bottom, you'll see these trims. And these trims are all stiff trims to one extent or another. So this one, it won't give me a preview, which is annoying, is a full grain leather and is extremely stiff. And then we have something that's suitable for collars, and then we have like a reinforcing one.
So these things here, they have material properties a little bit like the surface properties in Daz Studio, don't they? They basically have a combined appearance as well as cloth behavior. That's the same thing combined, isn't it?
Yes. So if I sort of drag this up to that fabric there, and I'll drag it to the other one too, and then reset my opacity because I am not very bright apparently. Opacity, there we go. And then I'll resim. You'll see it stiffens up a bit in a moment or two once my PC catches up with my brain.
Yoshi is a big fan. I appreciate that, Yoshi. It's very good. Hashtag Jay's face. I love it. Yeah, we don't get that very often.
So now you'll see it's kind of stiffened up. There's a bit more of a,
it's not that floppy anymore. It doesn't look like cloth
it doesn't
anymore.
look like, somebody's draped a piece of string around their neck. It looks like it's got a bit of substance to it. Okay, so now the trim part. So I've got a bunch of trims, and I'll just want to show you how to import one, because you can make your own trims. You don't have to use the ones in MD. If we go to File and Import and OBJ,
Actually,
I've got a directory of things here.
it was import add. We had that last time. Import add instead of import.
It works on both.
Oh, does it? Oh, good. That's okay
Yeah.
then. That's okay.
It's just I didn't have a pattern in last time, so
Oh,
it went wrong.
That's
Yeah.
why it was. Cool.
So I've got all of these bits and bobs here. So I've got this pearl, or I've got this. Where is it? The drop. The drop's what I want. So it's asking me what I want to open it as. It says trim because I imported the trim the last time, but it could be avatar, garment, morph target, etc. So I've selected trim. The scale for these objects, I've modelled them at meters because it's easy for me to do it that way, as opposed to Daz scale, which is centimeters. So my scale is meters, 100%. Everything else is fine. Be careful that a line bottom to ground is not on.
Yes, super important.
And then okay. And I modelled these such that they are around kind of chin height, so that I could move them in around her head fairly easily. So this is my trim, and there we glue.
That's where the glue trick comes in.
Yes, and I want to glue to somewhere around there. Now you'll notice that it's not quite right, and that's okay, because now I can rotate it around, move it into place somewhere around there. And when I sim, give it a moment.
Patience.
La 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 la. Hope my machine doesn't explode.
Yeah, look at that.
You'll see that this starts to pull at this, because this object has weight in Marvelous Designer. So MD, it has gravity in it. All the sims work off gravity, whether it be a trim or whether it be a pattern piece. And in the properties, I can update this trim weight by simply updating its property. So I could double it, for example, and it will behave as if it's slightly heavier. If I really up this, probably not a lot will happen. But as you can see,
it's
that's
like,
really kind of pulled it out of yeah, really pulled it out.
Heavy diamond necklace there.
Yeah. So let's adjust this back down to a level which is slightly more sensible.
Do you know, this property editor in Marvelous Design has always slightly confused me, only because you have to select the object and then that changes context sensitive, right? I would imagine.
Yes.
Like you can change
for the property.
You can select the skirt, and you then see the properties for the skirt. That's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I suppose the trim, I'm just not familiar with trims at all. So you just selecting the trim selects all polygons of the trim, I would imagine. It looks like it does that.
It selects it by material.
Oh, by material. That's how it does it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if you've got like a two-zone object, if you select one zone, you'll get the properties for that zone. If you select the other zone, you'll get the properties for that one.
Makes perfect sense, yes. Yes. Ah, nice.
Oops.
Right, so even though this has gone slightly wonky, I can stop my sim here, click on my object, and just move it. Because unfortunately, the actual trim itself isn't that clever. It sticks to the cloth and it mostly collides with the avatar, but it doesn't really behave as if it has a point, an anchor point, if you like. I would want this to behave as if it was anchored at this top piece.
Right, yes.
But it has no idea about that. It has no clue.
Does it somehow take into consideration the pivot point of the object when you make it?
It's possible. I haven't done that experiment yet.
Because so I suppose what confuses me a little bit, just because it's Marvelous Designer works very differently here, is that like if you in Hexagon we have this thing that when you have one object and you have another object, you can say, I think the feature is called lay on, and you need to tell Hexagon object 1 polygon here, object 2 polygon here, and then you say lay on, and then that'll align the polygons with one another. And Marvelous Designer doesn't seem to really, it doesn't work that way. It just says, well, this part of the cloth, you can glue this whole object on it, but it doesn't really, it doesn't seem to be very arbitrary of how, what part of the trim gets glued on, you know?
And I wouldn't like to say that Marvelous Designer can't do it. What I will say is I don't know how to do it.
No, it's marvelous that it works this way as well. So if it were the pivot point, great, then we know. We'll totally work on that. We'll try that out.
Yeah. So this gizmo is currently on world space, which is making it slightly awkward. So I'm going to switch my gizmo over to local coordinates, and then I can perhaps get this to
nice one.
and attach a little bit better.
Nice.
So that's the sort of basics of it. To make it a little better, first of all, I need to select the avatar and make sure the skin offset is set to 0. Mine generally is set to 0, but the default will be about 3. But also on the cloth piece, it has a property, and sometimes you'll find that MD gets confused about what properties to show you, as you can see. So I'm just going to, there we go, now it's working. There. So if you click a few different things, eventually it catches up with you. So on the add thickness down here, collision, this is the thickness collision. How far should, or how close should the mesh get to the avatar before it reacts? And by default, it's 2.5 millimeters. So it will stay 2.5 millimeters above the mesh. But we can set that down
to 0.
To 0. And if I press space now and hope, there we go.
It settles in. It's
settled in a bit. I might want to adjust this again.
This is why I find Marvelous Designer confusing, because there's so many settings that you have to just keep track of in your mind. So there's the offset between the avatar and the cloth, and usually that shouldn't be 0 because usually you want the cloth to be a little bit in front of the avatar. But then there's also that additional space now, the thickness. My goodness, that's.
Yes, there's all sorts of things. A bit like the conversation or the thing we had the other day about the layer blend.
Yes, oh my God, yes. Substance Painter, yes, absolutely.
Which layer blend?
Which one, exactly, yeah, there's only 4 different options.
Level, that level, or the other level.
Crazy stuff.
So, what we could also do here is make this look a bit more like a chain. So this is something I was looking at today. So this is going to be as much a surprise to Jay as it is to me, probably. So I'm going to switch down to one window and switch that window over to the 2D pattern so I can see it. Now, what I want to do is in edit pattern mode, I want to select this end and right click. Oh no, I need to get even closer. There we go. I need to select the line on its own. And then right click. No, don't do it to me. Sometimes you need to be so close to this thing that actually it doesn't really help you. So right click, offset as internal line. And I'm going to make it 2 millimeters, even though that might be not quite right. And just to overblow it, I'm going to set it to 100.
Oh, you do those internal lines. Oh, clever.
So when I click OK on this, it's going to create them, and then it's going to select them. Just thinking about it, if you look at this thing down the bottom.
Synchronization complete. There we go.
I hope. No,
100 wasn't enough. My goodness.
Not enough.
But that's okay because we'll do the same from the other side. At least it looks like it got to about the middle.
And also yeah, good point. Yes, good idea.
So if I right click on these and cut and sew, and then come over here and do the same. So select, right click, offset as internal line. It's remembered what I did last time. So click OK. And then right click, cut and sew.
Do you know, X201 is so right. Jay starts the campaign for less settings. Yes, I think petitions will be created.
Yeah. So I've got this bit, which I'm not going to do, but that will show blank. But if I now go back to the 3D window, and just a handy key press here, it's a little bit, how can I put it, hit and miss, but I've got a pattern piece selected. If I press the F key, F for Freddy, it will focus in on it.
Oh, yeah.
Which saves you doing a lot of messing about. Now, you should be able to see that this has got texture on it now. These look like little bits of link, and from a distance, it's going to give you some sense that it's a chain. And as soon as I check my mode and go on to textured with thickness, that should exaggerate that a bit. So if I just zoom out, and what I want to do is, what do I want to do? Oh, yes. I will select my material, and then I'm going to update it. So material in MD has a type. I want it to be metallic.
Ooh. And, that's sweet.
The color is a little light for me, so I'll make that a little darker.
Oh, not bad.
Yeah, see now we've got it shining a bit, and there is some variation in it because MD will create a normal map for each of these spots with a width. So, if you export it just as the normal map, that's fine. You'll get the normal map, but if you import it with thickness, you'll get even more. So thick textured surface, there we go.
So this is the thing that Marvelous Designer creates at the intersection between two, at a sewing line, essentially. It creates that little bit of a normal on the edge.
At every seam, there is like a property which you can set on or off.
Oh.
If you turn it off, you won't see the seam. And that's handy sometimes because you might have a belt in two different parts. But you don't want there to be a seam between those two parts at the back, for example. You only want it to be at the front. You can hide the seam at the back, and you can enhance the seam at the front.
Mr. T would approve. Nice metallic. Indeed, Robert. I totally agree.
Well, let's make it even more Mr. T approved.
Oh, come on, make it gold. Yes.
A bit more golden.
Look at that.
See, my pendant has come off a bit, so let's move that over. By the way, you don't have to keep this pendant at this size. Because I'm in the local gizmo mode, if I turn on scale, I can flatten it.
Oh yeah, make that more like a medallion thing.
Make it more like a pebble, if that makes sense.
When you have, I'm excited. I'm interested about the gluing option. It doesn't necessarily mean that. I mean, we probably want it there, but it doesn't necessarily need to be like right on the chain, right? So you could take the pebble and basically have a gap between.
Oh yeah,
that's possible,
absolutely.
Isn't it? Because it just knows, well, that object will be glued there, and I'm just adding some kind of an offset here.
Yeah. So workflow wise, my my thought about it is, I would want to add an eyelet, to be able to wrap around the chain and sort of, screw into the pendant to make it look right. But that's not going to work in Marvelous Designer because, the collision distances at, very small scale tend to cause it to go wrong. So, if you could add a little gap, and when you export the object, you can go into Blender, for example, and then you can add a little loop to attach your
Yes.
pendant to your chain. So yeah, it's not one stop fits all. You can make a pretty good go with this, but if you were going for a production ready piece, you might want to add a few extra details. If you're doing it for your own artwork and you know that this is going to be seen from a distance or even from the back, or actually, you're never going to be able to see whether it's got that extra little bit of detailing, then it's good enough for you.
Indeed, yeah.
I can't stress enough. You might find that people will tell you that making things is hard, and don't do it or whatever. And they're not wrong. Making things is hard, but making things for sale is hard.
Turning them, what we
Because
said earlier,
you-
but we're turning
yeah.
into the usable product that satisfies the end user is a very different ballgame than to create something like this where you go, oh, great, I made a necklace. I mean, turning this into a
Yeah.
render, and that's the end of the story.
I mean, we've taken a little time to do this, but that's because I'm explaining it to you. Actually, this would be a very quick thing if I were to do it in my production environment. I would do it. I would export it and ship it off to the next person.
I mean, you could, conceivably, you could literally spend another hour in Substance Painter and see if you can turn that necklace now into something that looks almost like a chain, or you could go into a 3D modeler and basically model that with real chain links. But you got the fit now, and that's kind of cool. That's like when you see this, the fact that the chain is kind of propped up on the collarbone and goes down, and that there's little air gap here. That's
nice
the stuff
gap.
that's really difficult to get right usually.
Yes, absolutely. And it curves so quickly after the collarbone and then curves back again, and it's riding relatively high on the neck, which it would do if there was something heavy on the end pulling it.
Sweet.
But when you're doing that manually by making a model, making that chain piece and that chain path would take me a long time. Other people may be quicker, but I would challenge them to be quicker than draping it in Marvelous Designer.
Less is more. Tuck is totally correct. There is a question from Belua Reutz. Hey Belua, good to see you.
Hello.
In terms of seams in Marvelous Designer, I like how they look, but I would love for them to be modeled and not just in normal maps. Is there a way to converting them into geometry?
Right, so
good question.
Indeed. You can export Marvelous Designer with thickness.
We tend to not do it if we want to do something else with it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. So thickness
that's the kind of caveat.
Yes.
But when you export it with thickness, that's fine. It will export the back and the front, and it will make those UVs identical. But it will export the bit in between flat in the UV, and that is not necessarily the best. Saying that, it also doesn't weld it all together. So the front is separate from the thickness, is separate from the back, and that in itself can have additional issues. If you were, for example, taking it into a ZBrush to do morphs, I want to move this bit over here and I want to move that bit over there. If your brush isn't, is just kind of fading out towards the join, the border between the two, between two seams, you might find that it starts to split your mesh. You can weld it all back together again, but it's quite time consuming.
If I understand it correctly, and this is just something I've heard, I have no experience with this myself, the way the thickness is usually applied at the very end, after you've done everything else that you could to your model. And often in terms of like fabric pieces like a skirt, often what happens is that you export it as a thin piece, and then it's literally just a plane, if you will, that has a normal pointing to the outside and no inside, and that's basically how it is. Sometimes you have the bit at the end that you have the seam going back in, but the inside of the skirt is basically just the other side of the normals. Whereas when you export it with thickness, a Marvelous Designer will literally go and create a front piece and a back piece. So you have normals going out to both sides and you have a tiny gap in the middle. And that's the thing that's problematic. If you do something like a sculpt, and if you're not careful, you might pull this piece up and you might pull the other piece through it, and that gets messy. So that's why usually when there is other work to be done after Marvelous Designer, the thickness is applied at the very end if you need it. But it's kind of good to know that Marvelous Designer does it, and also that we can use it, because sometimes we don't want to do anything after Marvelous Designer. We want to take this draped and just put it into Daz Studio, render it, and that's where that can really come in handy.
Yes, and one of the things that I think is important to understand is, I always think about things in terms of production, because that's what I'm geared towards doing. So I don't use thickness because it causes more problems than it solves. It looks beautiful in here, but it doesn't look beautiful elsewhere, especially when you've had to do something to it. But if you're not doing it for production, you can do what you like. Export it with thickness. If you're going to use it as a static mesh, then that's perfect. I mean, you can bring in Genesis into here as in the A pose, and model your clothes. Get them looking really, really terrific, and then you can bring in a pose as a morph target.
Indeed,
and
yes.
And then it will go to that pose, and you'll have your cloth posed as you want it to. You can then export it and import it into Daz, and away you go. You don't have to rig it. You don't have to mess about. You don't have to worry about the gaps. You just don't. You can just get on with it. But of course, in my brain, I have to make it work for everybody.
You want to, yes,
everybody who just wants one pose.
And indeed, and you want to turn it into a product later on. So yeah, absolutely. Kind of depends on what you're doing. So like in my case, I'd say, yeah, great. What I use Marvelous Designer for often is just to not use deforce, essentially, or to use things other than like clothing from previous generations that may not have had deforce. I try to just sim that in Marvelous Designer, and that just does such a good job. And then just like you say,
the simulation engine is amazing.
It's amazing, isn't it? And it gives literally all the clothing so much new life. So just sim all the clothing, bring that back in as a morph target, use that as a thing, but it wouldn't be suitable as a product at all. So yeah.
Oh, but I liken it to ZBrush a little bit. In that I have seen some beautiful sculpts in ZBrush.
Yes.
So detailed, so amazing, rendered beautifully. But that is useless, essentially, for almost everybody, because it's a billion polygons.
It's true, yeah.
But it's beautiful.
And
who
also,
cares?
And this exactly, this is really where artistic versus commercial thing really, it's you see sometimes these things like that they do for game characters, like people like Nathan Drake or whatever. They started as a ZBrush sculpt, of course, with like what you're saying, like perhaps like 5, 6, 10 million polygons, and you think PlayStation isn't going to like that, really. Nobody is going to like that. So then the heavy remeshing has to start, and but what's left over is still very cool, because then you bake all the normal maps and all that from it, and then so it's like you say, it's always good to have that fun side. Keep an eye on the fun side and see what works for you, and just roll with that. And
if you imagine that, what you do is make pictures, and I don't mean that in a denigrating way at all. If what you want to do is express yourself artistically through rendered images from Daz or from Blender or from wherever you want, you've got Genesis,
if you've got Marvelous Designer and, some desire to learn a little bit about it, then you have an unlimited wardrobe.
Indeed.
Unlimited. If you can make it, you can render it. If you could even think about it, if you could imagine, if you could only make 50% of the things that you can imagine in MD, then it gives you unbelievable scope.
It's true.
Unbelievable scope.
And they have, I mean, this is what I find amazing about Marvelous Designer. They have their own store here, like on the top left, they've got their own store tab. So those garments are a bit expensive, but there's some amazing stuff that you can literally just buy and fit to any avatar. Sure. But they also have this thing.
Oops, wrong one.
In the garment section, they give you the option to get started with basically what fashion designers call the block patterns. So you don't have to design your t-shirt every time. You can start off with something that they have, and then you can add bits to it. And even if you don't really know what you're doing, if you make something that looks funky, you go, hey, that's kind of cool. I like that. And then you just roll with it. That's nice. I kind of like that. So as Marvelous Designer, as a pipeline tool. And then of course you have the huge amount of garments that you can buy from places like ArtStation for like, $5 and stuff. That is so once again, that gives you, like, I totally agree with you, it gives you that option for an unlimited wardrobe. Even things you bought like 10 years ago, pop them into Marvelous Design and see what happens. Sometimes it'll fall apart, sometimes it won't work, but as a starting point for something else, it's a really, really cool tool to revitalize what's in your Daz library.
There is a little known, or I think it's little known tool within MD, whereby if you've got a cloth mesh, a clothing model, in OBJ format, so you've exported it from Daz, you can import it into MD, convert it to an MD pattern, using its UV.
It's UVs, yes. Map. That sometimes works, yeah.
Yeah. Not perfect, rarely anything is perfect, but, you've got lots of options, and believe me, I've tried most of them.
John, show us how you would export this necklace out so that we can put it into Daz Studio.
Okay, that's straightforward. If I select the pattern piece, I'll split my screen for that. And then switch this one back to the 2D, not the property, the 2D. There we go. So I just need to have the bits of pattern I want to export.
So not the one that
this
gives
bit of chain.
Right, gotcha. Just the bottom part.
Yeah. I don't need this top part because that's just there for stability. And if we have time at the end, I'll take it off and see what happens.
Okay. Okay.
So with all these pieces selected, I'll go to File, Export, OBJ selected, and give it a name.
Necklace will do, I like it. Necklace demo even better.
Yep. And realise that I've either missed something or something hasn't come up yet. It's calculating at the moment.
Oh, yes. There we go.
So I want a single object. I'm going to do it as a thick mesh.
Just to see what it does. I'd like to see the difference.
Yeah, exactly. I've got unified UV coordinates. I haven't UV'd this, so perhaps I should do that first.
Why don't we do that? It's part of the process to at least get some UVs on there.
So in the 2D pattern window, I can go to the UV editor.
Yeah, that's changed from 10. It was you had to go into kind of a different mode there. So yeah, good to see that.
So basically all I really need to do for this bit is drag these into the 0, 1 space and then scale them up so I've got a little bit of space at least. I could probably get more out of this if I didn't have another pattern in here. But this other pattern basically means I can't right click and rearrange them. But that's okay. The other thing I need to do is grab these down here because that's my UV for this little pendant.
That's the trim.
Yeah, and bring that up and just make that nice and big. So I've got plenty of space to draw on it if I want to. Because you could draw anything you want on there. You could draw, Celtic symbols, or you could even put a normal into it, to give it some oomph. So yeah, having enough space for that is very handy. So right, back to my 2D pattern window. I see to make sure I have these selected. Now the trim isn't represented in the 2D pattern window, so you can't select that, but that's okay, because when we go to File, Export OBJ selected, and the white necklace demo.
Call it demo thick, just so that we may have a thick and a thin version.
Yeah, okay. Demo thick, and save it. It will come up with the options in a second. I want to select all graphics and trims.
That's how you get the trim out. Yes, that's clever. Okay.
Yep. I'm also going to have select all patterns because I don't know why it isn't selected. Excuse me.
All patterns.
Unified. Sorry, mate.
Isn't all patterns going to also export?
Yeah, I'm a bit ambiguous on that one.
Yes.
Let's turn it off. Let's see what happens.
Because I'm confused by this as well. All patterns would suggest also the dress, which we don't want. So we'll see what happens.
It would, but I did tell it that I only wanted the selected one.
Selected, right? Indeed.
Yeah. Okay, so all patterns, let's leave that one off. Single object, thick, C. I want unified UV coordinates because that will give me my UV layout for the model. And then scale, you're basically scaling to wherever you're going. We're going to Daz, so this will be Daz Studio scale.
Sounds good.
And everything else is fine. There we go. So let's click OK.
Cool. Looking forward to this.
See, and it's having a think about it.
Robert was wondering, could you parent a torus primitive to the pendant in Daz to make the attachment ring? That is certainly possible, because it just needs to. It doesn't need to simulate there. It just needs to be visually appealing. So that'll work.
Yeah, I mean the other option. Well, I mean there's many options. There's so many options. There's so many ways to do different things that we're almost spoilt for choice.
Indeed,
I'm
yes.
always wary of saying that this is the only way you could do something, because it's never true.
There's always a million and one ways to skin a cat, as they say.
Yes, although
it's a terrible thing to do, though. Poor cat.
Leave the cat alone.
I know. Don't skin the cat. Terrible.
Right. So that's that. And if I go to Daz Studio, you may be relieved to realise that my Daz Studio launches just as slowly as I suspect everybody else's does.
Good to hear that also happens to professional vendors. Actually, that's very reassuring. It's not just us then.
Yeah.
Belua was wondering, so would you say that people on the Daz store that seem to have modeled seams, they would maybe physically sculpt the seams?
Yeah, quite possibly. See, MD isn't the only game in town. There are other, things that do a very similar job. I haven't used them, so I couldn't tell you whether they're better or worse. But yeah, there are other things. For example, I believe 3ds Max has a garment maker.
Okay.
I know Blender has one.
Yes, I know Blender has one.
Although I tried it and I didn't get on with it, but that could be me rather than Blender. So yes, they could be doing a very similar thing. And I've purchased clothes and I thought, I wonder how they've done that. And then I've looked at the UV and I've thought, okay, this is a garment maker, because I can see the UVs are drawn out pattern pieces. Others will basically paint in the seams, because you can paint the seam through a normal or even bump or displacement to give you that effect. for me personally, I'm not talented enough to do it by hand. There are many people that are, and how they do it, I couldn't possibly tell you. But yeah, I expect they do. Some of them.
Switch it out of iRay, then the Daz Studio is going to be a little bit more responsive.
Yeah. Texture shaded. Right. So if I now go File and Import, I've got my necklace demo stick. I need to make sure I'm at Daz Studio scale because I exported from MD as Daz Studio.
Indeed.
And
see what it looks like.
There we have it. I got that other bit of trim in there. Never mind.
Oh, because they were all trims, of course. That was also trim. Yeah. Oh, but that solves the
mystery of the no pattern.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So
let's go and redo that.
So to go back to Daz Studio quickly, has it exported it just exported the trims and nothing else? Yeah, gotcha.
And nothing else.
Gotcha. Okay. Good to know.
So I'll delete that and then back over here. I've got that selected. I'm going to delete this trim so it doesn't export.
Good to know about trims. This is something I need to play with. This sounds really exciting. I've never played with trims. See what other surprises we find in Marvelous Designer.
Well, I do have a video on trims that I did a week or two ago.
Oh.
On the 3D Megaverse YouTube site.
Brian, drop a link to John's channel in the chat. This is a really good channel about. I learned a lot about Substance Painter, but I did see there's a ton of videos on Marvelous Designer, so that's going to be really refreshing to hear you talk about how to use this program.
So I did a whole one on trims because it was a bit of a mystery to me, and I couldn't find much good, so I thought I'd do one.
Perfect.
And I've got. The thumbnail is kind of a before or after. There's a garment, and it's quite nice. It looks all right, but it's quite plain. And then next to it, I've got the one where I've added some trims, and it looks better.
Oh, okay.
Just looks better for adding those few little extra bits and bobs. Okay, so now I've got those selected. Let's try this again.
Thanks, Brian.
File, export, OBJ selected. Necklace demo thick. Yes, I'm going to overwrite it. All patterns. I know it doesn't make sense to me either. That's why I always tick it.
That's good to know. Yeah. Hopefully we're going to find out.
Yeah, everything else is fine. I'll click OK.
All right. So you and I, we both think it should contain the necklace, but not the dress, because it wasn't selected.
Indeed.
Let's see if logic gets
I know
us
it
anywhere.
works, and now I'm nervous that it won't.
I like approaching all these types of programs basically as video games, like let's go here and see what happens type of thing. It's part of the fun about it, isn't it?
I did that in Elden Ring.
Yeah, like in Elden Ring, yes.
Let's go here and see what happens.
So let's see where
you died.
Dang. What did we say the other day? Somebody was asking, is Elden Ring free to play or pay to play? And I said it's actually pay to lose. You pay $60 and then you lose all the time. Pay to die.
Right, so let's import this in.
A moment of truth. Come on.
Daz Studio scale. Where is it? There it is. And let's accept. And now I've got that as well. Oh, it's so annoying, isn't it?
So
it's an all or nothing.
Interesting.
I think you might be jinxing it, Jay.
I might be. It would. I mean,
it's worked every time since. And now I'm going to have to go to monochrome.
No. Hang on. Do that.
I don't save the children.
Try just selecting the dress and export it again as dress, and without the. Just as a curious question, if we do it without the trims, it should just have the dress now and not the necklace either, right? I'm thinking. Yeah. Maybe. As Jay jinxes somebody else's Marvelous Designer installation thousands of miles away. We're on other sides of the Atlantic, by the way. So I have the remote jinx going. That's good, isn't it?
pesky European expatriates.
Yes. The European expats. I love it. I need to play with this more. It's been Marvelous Designer since I've started using Substance Painter. I find there's only so much capacity.
There is only so much time in the day.
Yes, and for my brain to retain these things is really difficult. So
what you could do though, Jay, is make something in Marvelous Designer one day, and then paint it in Painter the next day.
Mm-hmm. And then rest for 5 days because
then
my brain melts.
Right, that's just the dress in theory.
Okay, let's see.
No.
So that's
something's gone weird. I'm sorry about that, but I'm going to default to getting rid of everything.
Because it is, I'm with you. Last time I tried it, you can just select a few pattern pieces and only those get exported and nothing else. Scared children.
It's always when you show people, when you show more than one person,
yes,
it gets even worse.
It's the demonstration effect.
Here, OBJ selected necklace. Yes. So the options, all patterns, all graphics and trims, single object, thick, UV coordinates. Okay.
All right. Now, if it crashes without saving, Jay's work will be complete. Yes, indeed.
So you have somebody shouting at you to save on a regular basis. Nobody said that to me yet, unless I've missed it in the thing.
Jeremy
I won't save.
Do you know, this is maybe Jeremy should have something like an app on the App Store, and then every 15 minutes it just goes personalized.
It just says,
Jay, save. John, save.
Import, right.
Come on, necklace, 11th time lucky.
There
it is. And look at the beautiful shape it has. It's like it's the thing that is often really difficult to get right. I like it.
So yes, you can see the sort of faceting on the seams there.
Yes.
That's not faceting because, the mesh isn't smooth. That's faceting because there is a bit of thickness between those pieces.
Could you switch to a wire shaded quickly? Yeah, so that gives us the topology. So if you look really closely, this is now the basically the necklace front piece, the back piece, but also the side pieces. So this is what Marvelous Designer has made, isn't it? Very thin, very tiny.
Mm-hmm.
But that's that's why thickness is actually great. If we could just use it like that, if we don't need any other steps aside from remeshing, if we wanted to do that. But if no sculpting is involved, this would be ideal. Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't have to do morphs, for example, for other figure shapes, it would be ideal.
Indeed.
But you do.
But you do, yes. Do you know, just out of curiosity, the trim, if you zoom in on that, is that the same geometry as it was when you modeled it? I don't think we saw that geometry.
It is the same geometry as I modeled it, that it triangulated when I imported it.
So it used to be quartz, and Marvelous Designer triangulated it, and then that is what gets exported. Gotcha.
Oh, no, actually, I tell a lie, because I made this from an isosphere, not a geosphere. Oh, okay. So actually, it was triangles, but it does triangulate.
Okay.
As a lot of things do, a lot of sheets, because that's a fairly standard practice. Because oddly enough, it saves on memory, triangulating something.
Fun fact that I've heard, and I don't know how accurate that is, but every render engine doesn't render quads, so quads aren't actually rendered. Every quad that, even if your topology is quads, the render engine will triangulate it before rendering. And so the implication is that if you give it quads, you might see something other than what you were expecting in the render result, which is why it is recommended that you triangulate before rendering. Not so much inside Daz Studio, but just as a general rule of thumb, there are no quads as such. They're good for us for working with and for animating and all that, but for render engines, they don't really exist.
They don't
so they
care.
just go cut it in half and just make everything triangles.
Yeah, so the benefit of doing that yourself is you get to define the flow of the triangle.
Yes.
As opposed to having the render engine guess.
Yes, exactly, because it would just go and does like a super quick thing just so that some triangles get made, but you may have more sophisticated things on the modeler. Jeff says, can we see this on Genesis, please? Yes, absolutely. Let's make it happen.
No, because she'll be nude. Won't somebody think of the children?
Good point. You could always try dropping this into the shared folder that we've set up, and I quickly do it. How's that?
Well, I think I can manage.
Yeah, you just
to frame that in such that I wasn't trying to be difficult. I was being silly, really.
It's true. I mean, we're a private group here. It's just one of those things, you know.
Yeah, I know we've all seen Genesis.
No, I've never seen her nude ever.
No, never, ever, ever. There you go. And let us go iRay just to see if my machine bursts into flame.
You can even put a bikini on her or something, or use my fascinating stream safe textures product that'll avoid that on places like YouTube.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll turn the iRay off because now I can't do a damn thing. I said the D word.
That's okay. If you use the F word, that's problematic. Thank you, Brian. Indeed, that's the one I mean. Thinking of making an 8.1 dedicated product for it, actually. Now that I know more about Substance Painter, thanks to John's tutorials, I might release them.
Come on, PC. Give me my mouse back. There we go. What did Brian say? Oh, I don't know. Let me find a garment I might have actually in here. See what I've got. I don't have much. I tend to clear things out to keep it nice and trim. And it would be really helpful if I knew where the clothing folder was. Let's have a look. I would just use basic wear. I know it's not
basic
fun,
wear is good. No, but that's perfect. Yeah. Right, and Chris agrees. Stream safe textures are great for streaming because it's one of those things. For us as content creators, we just don't want to get in trouble. It's not that
No.
Chris is about to reach 1,000 subscribers on Twitch,
nice one, Chris.
And you don't want to jeopardize that. So
no, it only takes one person with a very low tolerance meter for digital bodies to have somebody do something like that.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So yeah.
On Genesis, I like it.
So let me just select this and go to the surfaces.
Yeah, pop a little gold material on there. Oh, you just do that. Even better, yes. Crank up metallicity.
Roughness. I never like anything 100% shiny.
No, same here.
Let's try that in iRay.
Super. Awesome.
There we go.
It's gold. Always believe in yourself.
Yes, always believe in yourself. You have the power.
You're indestructible.
You are. I'm definitely not.
We are also.
I go to bed fully healthy and wake up with a bad back. So
that is so funny. This is really cool. I'm going to go and try and repeat this process maybe on a Twitch session this week. I'm planning a couple. There's a few items I want to try out from ArtStation, like literally good looking Marvelous Designer garments. And I've just upgraded to 11. I just want to see how that performs, maybe get a few good funky renders out of it. I'm looking forward to that. And this I'm definitely going to play with. It is often with these types of techniques, you just have to experiment and get excited about and just try it out and see how it works for you. Including the thickness thing. I never really exported anything with thickness from Marvelous Designer, so it's kind of interesting to do that.
It would be nice to sort of find a way around it, an easy way around it, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I have one other thing to show, and that is, the export method we just used wouldn't get you a normal map.
Ah, good point. Right.
Yeah. So for that, we have to go into the UV editor.
Do you know, that's actually, just while I'm thinking about it, if you do export something with thickness, will you get maps out at all or not really? If you bake them?
Well, the export version won't give you a good map. To get good maps out of this on zones, you have to use this method.
You got to bake.
Whether it be diffuse, whether it be normal, etc. So I'm just going to select all my bits up here.
It's actually good that
actually, I'm not going to select anything. I'm going to right click and reset to 2D arrangement, which it didn't do. Which it did do. Sorry, I'm mixing up my brain now.
It's easy.
I'm just going to move that up there and then select that.
With 3D apps.
It is. Right click and fit to 0, 1. Yeah. Now you can adjust this if you want. I'm just going to make these bigger for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. Also, for the sake of space, I'm going to
yes, very
stack these. And I won't get double the size out of it, basically.
This is one thing I wish they would improve in Marvelous Designer. We're not expecting miracles, but just make it less.
Yeah, it's a little bit manual
than it currently is.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so up here we have a preview, and this is on sort of standard at the moment. But I can preview the normal map by going into there. And if we go into these little pieces here, you'll see wherever there's a seam, there is a normal.
Nice.
Yep. You can actually control how strong that normal is, but I'll leave that for another time. I think I've displayed it in another video somewhere. But now all you do is go up here and bake your textures with this bake texture button. It's like a quartered t-shirt with a camera on it. You can set a directory. I'm just going to do it to there for now, rather than keep you waiting. Give it a name. Define what you want to do, because this uses UDIMs. You can set different UDIMs up for different zones. I'm going to do all tiles and then tell it which ones I want. So the diffuse, for example, not that I have one. Metalness, normal, roughness, and opacity. Opacity is, if you have got some opacity in your map, you could use that. I'm not at the moment. And displacement. And you can save that out. See, it did a bit of a bake down there. If I click on this open button again, we should see I've got my necklace normal here now, which I can right click and open.
And there
now
it is.
I've got a normal map for my necklace.
And so that's the way how you'd make the little seams visible now in Daz Studio by applying that normal.
Indeed.
Very good stuff.
If I nip over to Daz Studio and select this surface. I didn't rename these, but yeah, I should have done that really. What is it under? It's under basic, it's under bump,
and then there it
normal
is.
Map. Now I need to remember where I put it. Easier said than done.
Yes.
It's here. Copy address as text.
Janine, welcome. Good to see you.
Has Janine just arrived?
She has, yes. Maybe you were lurking.
Does that mean we're going to have to start again?
Yeah, yes. Actually, for Janine and for WebSol. Sorry, we need to go.
Nobody told me how. Nobody told me it worked that way.
Actually, we're starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, so yeah, that's basically it's like in the cinema. We do multiple runs.
Yeah. Right,
This
so
was
I've
the
applied my
matinee.
normal map now, and if I trust my PC a little bit, which I don't, let's put this in IRA mode again.
Come on, we can do it.
Oh, I know I could do it. Can I undo it? That's the problem.
Right.
It's not showing up very much. But that could just be because it's such a tiny piece that I've not done a very good job. But I can see something going on
I can
between
see
the
something.
links.
Yeah, I can see something going on too.
It's quite subtle.
It's definitely.
I would want to properly texture this, to put a little dirt and occlusion and so on and so forth to, give it that little bit of extra something.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you know, nothing's ever 100% clean.
No.
Actually, what am I talking about? I'm so stupid.
Did you
I just changed the UVs in Marvelous Designer and then didn't export them.
Oh, good point. You re-UV'd it, but then you didn't actually apply that on the object. Good point. Yes, let's go and do that. Do you know, you can even, if you wanted to be seriously advanced about this, you can leave the necklace as it is, just export the OBJ again, import it as a second UV set. How's that? That's crazy. Then you don't have to put it again on the... let me talk you through it. It's good. Let's do this. Let's do this.
That'd be great as soon as I get control of my mouse.
Okay.
It's only because I've got MD open doing things and I've got other things and the streaming's going on.
Yeah.
Normally it's not this drastic.
Do you know, I have the same problem. When I stream, I literally have a whole PC just to make the stream and to send it away and to do all the mixing with the camera and stuff. So my main presentation PC doesn't do any of that. I know it causes a lot of stress. So essentially like iRay plus streaming, it's just that's they don't like one another. Exactly.
So good. Okay.
Oh, this is exciting. This is a trick, actually. I learned that from Chris. Very cool. It's one of those hidden features in Daz Studio. There's so many things like, triangulating and detriangulating. Daz Studio has it all. It can literally do it.
It's got so much in it. And I don't think if I started learning now, I would find everything. So I want edit geometry.
I think so, yes. Edit geometry and then load UV set.
Load UV set. There we go.
So cool.
And that will be this.
We give it a name.
Set the right one.
UV or not UV? That is the question.
Oh, it says it's invalid.
That's it? Oh, it's invalid. Well, why is it invalid?
I don't know. Okay, that happens sometimes. Never mind.
We'll just do it. Nice.
Import.
Yoshi wishes there was a copyright clause that when a software is over 10 years old or beyond its fifth upgrade, it would just be, you can
just do what you like.
Be kind of good. I think Adobe kind of do that with switching off their licensing service for older versions of CS software. Like I think about CS 5 and 6, they're kind of, I don't know if they still have licensing service in place. J jokes, yes, we need that hashtag. It's petition. Come on, we need to see those beautiful UV maps, those beautiful normals.
Fingers crossed. Hold your breath, everyone. I'm in the wrong. There we go. All right. There you go.
Yes. And that actually now looks much like a necklace. This is something that would work.
It would look even more like a necklace if I put the things on an angle. You know that style, I'm sure.
yeah, these look a bit square, but if I'd put the cuts on an angle, it might have been even better.
What a cool idea. I mean, literally hours to play with and just see what comes out. That is cool.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not, right? Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you can get a demo of MD and, play to your heart's content.
You can even
for 30 days or whatever, and then, if you want to continue, buy it or, whatever.
if you need
I
longer,
have to say,
you just
I don't work for MD.
Email address.
I don't get any kickbacks for it. I'm not, I just think it's a great program. And I think you could do so much with it to be creative and mess around and,
Just thinking of the fun factor, it's amazing. I've spent so much money on MD and I've never really got its full potential out of it, but the countless hours of fun I've had with it are priceless, really. So it's an approach to doing things in 3D that it's just very unique. It's not something that you get in other programs, that you can literally just pull out a piece of a garment from something and just make it fit and stop the sim in something. This is kind of how, if you look at some of the sets like the undress morphs, this is mostly how they are done, that you just find creative ways to just move garments around and stretch them in ways that you would use in real life, that you wouldn't really, it wouldn't look natural in sculpting or in vertex editing tools. So this is something that really MD can bring to the party. It's really exciting to play with.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just for clothes.
Exactly, it's not just for clothes,
but, I make curtains.
Bedclothes, things like tablecloths, anything that needs folds, absolutely. This is what this is what it can do. You can wrap up boxes and stuff, and
all sorts of things.
Inflatable things. I remember making an inflatable boat once. You just put surface pressure into it, and then it just inflates and deflates, animates beautifully. It's just like, my God.
Good old internal pressure.
John, thank you so much for doing this for us. This is really, really nice, looking a bit at your workflow. I'd love it if you could come back. I mean, we were kind of briefly talking about you could rig the pendant at the front in Daz Studio, so there's a bit of rigging that we can do. There's also...
Well, I was thinking for that, more on an earring.
Oh, but an earring, that's a good idea too, yes.
Yeah, dangly earring, you might want to rig, have an extra bone, so that when, Genesis leans to one side, you can, adjust the angle so it looks like it's dangling, not stuck to her head.
Yes. We can explore that. We can do more Substance Painter stuff. That is always cool.
Substance is always fun.
It's always good, isn't it? We're going to come up with something. It's really been nice having you, John. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
It's been lovely.
It's been lovely, hasn't it? It's really nice.
Yeah, really nice.
Also, if you drop by either John's videos or my streams, we're going to meet John again. John was very helpful when I was battling through a face painting thing on a Twitch session. You were so instrumental in showing me new things. It's really it's a wonderful way of learning from one another, and I'm hoping we can bring the community together more and more.
Absolutely.
We're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I'm going to roll the titles, and hopefully I will see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care all. Bye bye.